Nobody wants to crash their bicycle. In fact, I'm pretty sure we actively avoid it. Just like I try to avoid paying my taxes, but inevitably that final drop through the door and then I'll file that return. Bad analogy maybe, but the gist is that crashes are inevitable. They're gonna happen. And if you crash and land on your helmet, well, apparently you're supposed to replace it. You just know that Big Helmet has planted that rumor to try and get more product out the door. Bunch of big helmets. I mean, it's probably not just ruthless capitalism. So as a man of data and science, I've come to one of the few places in the world that can actually give me the answers. Met Bluegrass have a linear and rotational testing machine, measures the G-forces from crashes, and I'm going to be able to answer questions like, how many Gs could potentially cause a concussion? And are heavier helmets better and stronger? And do you actually have to replace one after every crash? I don't know. Let's go find out. So there is nothing like data presented in a clear and concise way to just allow consumers to just plow through that market and bullplop and just get the answers that they need. And usually to get that data, companies have to outsource the testing. And that is really expensive. But some companies, they'll purchase the equipment so they can get their product to the required level and do it all in-house. So we've got a Healy here who's going to tell us a little bit more about the machines. So we know you break helmets. What else do you do?
So basically, this is our internal lab with a complete facility able to replicate any kind of test, mandatory or non-mandatory, available on the market.
Yeah.
For example, we have here a multi-purpose machine able to do all the mandatory certification like the American, the European, the Australian one. So across using different hand wheels, different head forms and so on. We have the rotational impact machine. There are very few in the world, and it's made for example, applying the MIPS protocol or any kind of, let's say, rotational impact test that we wish to do. Okay. So something on top of linear. Yeah. And then on that side as well, we have another machine very important for us because, and for the Pinkbike community, because it's the one that tests the safety of the chin bar.
Not every company has their own machines to do these tests. Like, does that mean you guys certify your own helmets?
No, absolutely not. This is not possible. It means that we are able to run a lot of tests in the development phase and during the lifetime of the product. For example, to get the certifications, if even a mandatory one or a voluntary one, for sure you have to send the products to a third-party lab, completely independent. But what happened during the life of the product? For example, normally for us at least one helmet lasts 5 years. So we are able with this lab to check every batch test of production. So picking up products from the production, test them here and make sure that they are aligned with not the certification, but with our own statistics.
So you use it to maintain quality. You don't do your own certifications, that's a third party, but do you use it for anything else?
Yes, definitely. There is also a huge part which is done in advance the first mass production, which we call development phase. It sounds crazy, but for example, on this product, the Vanguard, which is one of the latest lightweight enduro helmet that we released on the market, over 400 helmets has been tested here, crash tested, smashed, before the first mass production.
Before you can sell anything and make any money, you have to smash 400 of them.
Yeah, at least to basically create what we call the ID card of the product.
It's a lot of helmets.
A lot of time from the R&D.
So these machines are measuring G-forces that go through the helmet, and I know a lot of people want to know, is there a specific amount of G-forces where you're going to end up with like a concussion?
That's a difficult question to ask, but actually for what we know until now about concussion is not really related to G-forces only, at least. I make an example. We had one of our rider, Vinity, who had a huge crash at Rampage in 2021, and the helmet was actually
this helmet.
Yeah, yo. So heavily smashed with serious cracking and so on, and totally no concussion, and the day after he was riding with his friends in Utah. So basically, it's not really about G-force, but it's a combination between linear and rotational, so it's not just about Gs.
So it's not just about G-forces, and those are the kind of compulsory certifications that we went through, but there's also been some private ones I've seen coming out, and Virginia Tech is one of them. So we've got Matteo from R&D. Got a question for you. What is this Virginia Tech rating that's kind of been popularized recently?
Yeah, Virginia Tech has a testing procedure that is taking into consideration rotational testing. So we are talking about not mandatory certification. Such a kind of procedure is interested in 360 degrees of the helmet.
It does 6 different impacts at 2 different speeds. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Here you see in this sample the marking of the 6 different impacts that are evaluated at 2 different speeds.
Okay.
And so, as you can see, we are evaluating 360 degree structure of the helmet. So it's a combination of linear and rotational part spread all along the helmet.
Right, and I've seen the ratings, like they do like star ratings, and I've noticed that half-face helmets do better than full-face helmets. Like I thought full-face helmets would be safer, but they don't rank as high.
Actually, there is a difference because rotational inertia in the case of an open-face helmet is different from a full-face product. For obvious reason, here we have the chain guard, here we have no chain guard. So it's not correct to say open-face helmets are somehow looking safer than full-face. This kind of category should have specific ranking, having wider area covering also part of the face.
Right, okay, so it doesn't mean that they're not as safe, it's just there's different factors involved with the chin bar.
Yeah, the rotation on the head and so on.
So you do all your internal tests, you have the certifications, and why does no one publish the raw data from that?
Well, we don't publish data as well as other companies are not publishing because, well, on top, not all the companies have a laboratory like this one. And in our case, we rely on external laboratory that are certifying our job. So they are independent laboratories, such as notified bodies, such as Virginia Tech, for example, laboratory, that are putting together testing results, and they are making sure the helmet is safe for the mandatory certification, or they publish data, like in the case of Virginia Tech.
Okay, so going for the impartial rather than we make the best helmets and you have to trust us.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, these machines don't look very much like the trails that we ride on. So like, how do you know that crashes out in the real world are actually represented by these machines?
Well, we are used to compare the helmets we receive from pro athletes. This is an example coming from Ronan. The impact testing point is that one. And it's totally comparable to what happened to Ronan. You see the deformation here of the carbon shell is absolutely similar. The real life is similar to what we are collecting at the laboratory. In addition to pro athletes, we also have a crash replacement program that is collecting impacted helmet from the market. So consumer can send us back impacted helmet, and this is helping to improve and increase our data sheet of cases.
As part of the testing we've talked about here, you've got the machines for doing all the compulsory and voluntary tests. Like, we didn't really talk about what this machine is for, because I notice all these ones are kind of linear stuff. So this one's rotational. What's that one for?
This is made for rotational testing, starting from a MIPS system. So that's specific to evaluate rotational acceleration and the effect of this kind of testing situation.
Nice. And luckily, we do have someone from MIPS here. So let's go find him. That way. Johan Hedlund, head of R&D at MIPS. Now, we've all seen the marketing that MIPS is supposed to reduce the rotational forces getting transferred to the brain. But why is this important?
Well, we have to start with the anatomy of the brain.
Okay.
The brain is suspended in fluid inside the head.
Yeah, just floating.
Yeah, floating around and connected to the rest of the body by blood vessels and axioms. So when you move the head around, the brain is following along, but a bit slower than the rest of the head. Research has shown that rotational motion is much more damaging to the brain than linear motion. Yeah, since when you rotate the brain or rotate the head, you get the tension between the the brain that flows around,
Yeah.
and these strings attaching the brain to the rest of the body, so to say.
Okay, so it like tugs on the little
Yeah,
connections.
you get tension
Right.
or strain in those
Okay.
tissues.
So the big massive mush going slapping against the side isn't as bad as the
Rotation,
twist
exactly.
in some. Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
When you have a crash, you often have motion both parallel to the ground and
Okay.
oblique to the ground, so to say. And when you crash, you get a rotational force
Yep.
added to the helmet. So what MIPS is trying to do is to extend this built-in protection system that we have in the head already
Right.
with the MIPS system. So the MIPS system is a sliding layer inside the helmet that enables movement between the head and the outer shell of the helmet.
Okay. If you take two downhill racers, Dakota Norton, big wavy hair, and there's Eddie Masters, bald head. Hair feels like it's got a lot of slip to it, and even mine, I can see my skin even does as well. I mean, does that not act like a MIPS layer?
The short answer is no. And the actual impact is just 10 milliseconds of force.
Okay.
And that's a tenth of a blink of an eye,
Okay.
to be comparison. And the force that you get on your head is equal to a small car at that short time period.
Yeah.
And that makes it really hard for hair or skin or anything to do the same thing as the MIPS system.
So when there's a small car on your head, the hair doesn't really slide.
No, it doesn't.
And you're saying a concussion, if it is going to happen, it's going to happen in that 10 milliseconds.
In that 10 milliseconds, yes. That's
Right.
when the damage occurs.
Okay, that's quite savage. So one of the viewers that I pitched questions to said he's always between helmet sizes. He's like 49 centimeters, and you could wear a medium or you could wear a large. If both fit on his head and both feel comfortable, which would you lean towards?
If both fits, I would go for a small one.
Okay, there you go. So in terms of, like, some helmets come with MIPS and some come without, and some models have both. Have you guys done testing to see what the difference in rotational energy transfer is between the same helmet with and without?
Yeah, and that is actually part of our test protocol. We must see a significant improvement.
Okay, so there is a
percentage-wise.
difference. Yeah. Can we test it? Yeah. Let's go test it. Yeah. Right, go. So, which one's which?
This one is the without MIPS version,
Yep.
and this one is the version with MIPS.
Right, so, I mean, most of the Pinkbike audience and myself are familiar with downhill helmets, and there's now the enduro style ones that are full face, but they're very different and pass the same certification. Can we do some tests to see the difference?
Of course, we have
Okay.
to move to the other one.
Okay, let's go.
So the value was, the peak was 188 Gs. That is very far from the limit for the STM standard. It's 300 Gs.
So it's safe.
Yeah.
More.
So now we got 204 Gs. That is very far from the limit of 300 Gs as before with legit carbon.
Yep.
It's only 8% more in terms of G compared to the legit carbon.
Okay, and that's because the legit's the downhill racing focused and the other one's the enduro focused, and that's 8%
Right,
difference.
right, you're
Okay.
right.
Okay, cool. So we just saw the differences there, but like if someone's choosing a helmet, they're both downhill certified, like how do they choose which one?
So first, you have to consider that the ASM certification is also needed for racing. So it's not mandatory, as we said before, to put the product on the market, but it's needed for racing, either in enduro or down.
Oh, so it's ASTM is required for downhill and enduro racing.
Yeah, exactly. And but what we always suggest is depending on the discipline that you actually do. So
Okay, so just because it's the Vanguard is downhill certified doesn't mean it's necessarily for downhill. That's just the ASTM test.
yeah, exactly.
We've looked at the kind of lighter end of the spectrum. Also going to the heavier end of the spectrum, I know in the past I've chosen motocross style helmets to race downhill because I felt like it was going to be safer. And in your experience, would that be the case?
I mean, we have also seen that for sure with the speeds now involved in downhill, it kind of makes sense because definitely the motorbike certification requires higher impact speed in the test. So that's also why, for example, in our own lab, we take inspiration from that in the way we do test, for example, the Legit Carbon or the Vanguard as well. Everything which is related to downhill or enduro, or let's say that everything which is a full phase. Yes, we can understand the choice of someone using that, but we also have always to bear in mind the intended use. And the products are designed for the intended use. That it's enduro, downhill, or motocross in that case.
Would there be negatives to choosing motocross helmet for downhill?
Probably, definitely, I guess it's much heavier than a downhill helmet, which can, of course, has a kind of an impact in terms of the fit, the weight on the neck, and again, all these aspects that we know we are designing something different. When we are speaking about a bicycle helmet, we always have to keep in mind ventilation, lightness, all those are parameters that also made me think that somehow it's more complicated to reach this same kind of testing and energy, and which you have seen, it's impressive, with that in mind. So having something light, having something ventilated, having something super safe.
So you say you take inspiration from the motorbike standard. What kind of inspiration do you take?
So basically, of course, it's something purely R&D, so that we can do because we have an internal lab. It's not part of a standard, a fixed standard, but on an helmet like the Legit Carbon, for example, for downhill, we can have a test on the chin bar, a crash test, which measures G force, which is something that the motorbike certification requires, but nothing in the mountain bike instead is asking. We can actually use that machine to kind of replicate a similar test with mountain bike speeds and energy.
This is the test that is inspired by motocross. We compared 3 different products. Legit Carbon is the first one. The second one is the Vanguard, and the third one is the Parachute MCR.
Okay.
All those helmets are performing pretty well, far away from the limit, the threshold limit of 250 Gs.
And I notice on the graph here, it kind of comes up and then it like dips away. And it's mentioned earlier that that is a sign of cracking, causing the dissipation.
We have the example of the Vanguard here. If we look at the helmet after the impact, we see in this situation here and here, a couple of small cracking.
How many certifications does this one have?
Seven different certifications,
okay.
because we have 3 mandatories, that is the European, the North American, and the Australian.
Okay.
Then we have the 2 ASTM, so the downhill and BMX racing. We have the NTA, the SPLEC.
Yep.
We have the MIPS, and we have the Virginia Tech. So it's a plenty of certification that are making the level of safety of this product more complete in relation to the all potential use.
Nice, cool. During all the kind of talk, we've said about all the certifications, but nothing's really mentioned the peak. Is that something that's tested?
Actually not, because you have to consider that all the helmets are tested without the visor. So any lab, third-party lab, they actually remove the visor to run the test on the products. But the visor is there, mainly on mountain bike products. It's actually quite big and prominent, let's say. So that's why we, for example, made all our visor flexible and with a safety release, which we test in a, let's say, non-traditional way, because it's something that we develop ourselves for our own testing, but we can see here.
Let's get really close, Max. Get really close. Whoa. So yeah, it just comes straight off, hey. So when that happens, that's a sign that if you were to crash, it's not gonna like...
Exactly. So in that way, in this case, the visor doesn't interfere with the position of the helmet on your head and doesn't break, maybe becoming edgy or cutting.
But it still serves the purpose of looking cool.
That's it.
So one of the common things that is said is that if you have a crash in a certain area, the EPS deforms, and if you crash in it again, it's supposed to be a lot worse. I noticed you got some helmets here that have been smashed. Can we retest one to see like how much worse it is?
Yeah, actually we can take one from VNT with the crash at Red Bull Rampage and have a test, a second test on the back.
Okay.
Actually.
Okay, Vinny's helmet now performs 32% worse than before compared to our statistics.
But it is still actually is better than the standard.
Than the standard, of course, but you can see it's not good as our statistics on that point.
Yeah, it's not going to be as protective.
Yeah.
But it surprises me that it still beats the standard as well, so that's cool. This cracking when you crash, why can't the helmet be made so it just doesn't deform and crack like this?
I mean, actually cracking is a crucial part of an helmet design. We design helmet to crack because each crack is a lowering in energy transmitted during a crash to your head.
The EPS deforms and cracks to absorb the energy, but is there not a material that would deform and then return? Like, I know D3O for like elbow pads and stuff. Would that not work?
Actually, there's nothing like EPS when it's up to energy management across different kind of conditioning.
Okay.
So we have to think that all this kind of testing that we have seen until now, they are also performed in very hot or very cold conditioning after. So we put actually the helmet into the oven or into the fridge, underwater immersion, and then we test it. And all this kind of conditioning are also influencing the performance of materials.
Okay.
And expanded foam like the EPS are still legal.
Okay. That was a lot of smashing helmets, thoroughly enjoyed, but I do have two more viewer questions, and they want to know, like airflow. People talk about number of vents, but it's not really a good quantifier. Do you have, or is there an industry standard for airflow?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's really an industry standard. It's something very specific that we are now able to test. So let's have a look.
Okay, let's go have a look.
This is our brand new wind tunnel that we called the Tube. It's able to run different kind of testing, of course, from aerodynamic point of view, but as we were speaking about ventilation, we actually have also the chance to equip it with a thermical headform, which got heated, and then we can measure how much the temperature goes down with each different helmet, so that you can actually have a parameter to validate and quantify the ventilation of our product.
This was actually a genuine question. We did not know they had this. This is pretty cool. Yeah. Pink is cold. Blue is the hot. Very cool. It's cooling down. He's got a cold face. Super interesting, but I do have one more question from the one and only Jackson Connolly. And he wants to know, he's a lovely lad, he's from Australia, bless him. How many J's until you die?
Good question. Let's have a test.
Right, put me in the ring. Is there a value?
No, there's no value. We can state, unfortunately.
He's gonna be
I know you are the man of the concise reply, but...
He's going to be very disappointed. Sorry, Jackson. So they told me when they went looking, it's actually 369 Gs when you die. That was a huge day testing helmets, smashing things and finding out lots of interesting information. For me, the things that stood out were like that really high energy moto inspired test in the chin bar, like way higher energies than the kind of standard certifications. And I wish more companies really push their products and their testing like the guys here do. So that was really cool to see. And also that MIPS information about how like concussions happen in that first 10 milliseconds. And that's what MIPS is designed to smooth out that acceleration, that angular acceleration. I did not know that. So that is also really interesting. Finally, the last thing that I was really impressed to see was that this company's lightweight enduro helmet is actually really comparable in performance. It was like quite close in the testing to their full-on downhill helmet. And that's something I personally would not have trusted. Like when I pick up a lightweight helmet, I just cannot believe that it could perform that good. So that was really interesting to see, and I'm really glad we got to answer those questions. If there was anything we didn't ask and you would want to ask, let us know down in the comments, and we're hopefully going to get someone from Met or Bluegrass to come and answer your question. And if you've got an idea for a really good test, suggest it. We might be able to get that done. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you to everyone here, and I hope you enjoyed. And yeah, see you in another Explain Explore video in the future. Cheers. Can I go in there?